Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're diving into one of the most chilling tales from our dark archives, a place where the light never fades but the shadows grow deeper than any horror movie ever dared to explore. Set against the rugged coast of Eilean Mor in Scotland, this story is as old as the very lighthouse that watches over it, yet its secrets remain shrouded in mystery and malevolence. The year was 1907, a time when technology's reach extended beyond mere curiosity into the realms where superstition reigned supreme. Eilean Mor stood sentinel over the dark waters of Loch Etive like an ancient guardian from another age. Its keepers, men chosen by their stoic and seasoned hearts, were tasked with tending to the beacon that guided ships through treacherous fogs and swirling mists. In those days, before satellite navigation and electronic aids became common, Eilean Mor's lighthouse was a vital lifeline for sailors navigating through one of Europe's most dangerous straits. The keeper, Mr. John McIntyre, his wife Margaret, and their young son, Tommy, lived in what we might now call an isolated retreat, but back then it was considered the best way to ensure the safety of those who sought shelter from the storms of Loch Etive. On a dark evening when the moon hid behind a veil of clouds, something went terribly wrong. The lighthouse keeper's clock stopped ticking midday. It didn't just slow down or get stuck, it froze in time, as if defying the passage of time itself. But that wasn't the worst of what occurred that fateful day. The McIntyre family received a final message from their brother-in-law, Mr. Duncan McKinnessy, who had ventured out to check on them. His report was chilling. The clock stopped and the shadows grew so thick I could barely see my hand in front of my face. It wasn't just that he couldn't read time or navigate by the light, it seemed as if nature itself was closing its eyes. Days turned into weeks, and no word came for them. The lighthouse stood alone, the only light piercing through the darkness, but to those who lived nearby, it felt like an eerie sentinel watching over their darkest fears. The locals whispered about strange occurrences around Eilean Mor, whispers of ghostly apparitions seen near the cliffs, or stories of the keepers leaving behind chilling notes that could not be deciphered until years after they vanished. But this was only the beginning. As months passed without any word from those who maintained their duty at the lighthouse, strange phenomena began to unfold around Eilean Mor. Trees seemed to move on their own in the night, and crops withered inexplicably near the edges of the property. These signs were unsettling enough, but they pale in comparison to what happened next. It was clear that something far darker than mere superstition had taken hold. The tales of disappearance escalated from whispers into a full-blown mystery. Children who dared to venture near the lighthouse reported feeling an almost palpable presence nearby. Their parents warned them against exploring beyond the designated boundaries, afraid of what they might witness or feel. The final blow came when the very fabric of reality seemed to break under Eilean Mor's watchful gaze. One evening, a storm hit the region with such ferocity that it pushed boats into perilous waters near the lighthouse itself. It was during this storm that the tragic realization dawned on those who knew the keeper's family: they had not survived the night. And so, as we stand at the precipice of what lies beyond our comprehension in the depths of Eilean Mor, let us remember that history is filled with tales of the unknown. The lighthouse stood firm, its light steady and unyielding against the winds of time and nature's own dark whispers. But the question remains: who or what did it see? And why does it seem to be waiting for someone to find out? But this was only the beginning. As time passed, the disappearance of Mr. and Mrs. McIntyre and their young son, Tommy, remained a mystery shrouded in darkness. No official investigation was launched until years after the incident, as the authorities were not convinced that supernatural forces could play such a significant role in human affairs. Local investigators, armed with only the remnants of what they termed spooky stories, attempted to piece together evidence from the scene. They found no obvious signs of forced entry or struggle. The doors and windows appeared intact, suggesting no physical breach. Strange, indeed, if these were supernatural events, there should have been some trace left behind. The investigators visited every corner of Eilean Mor, searching for any sign that would explain what had happened to the McIntyres. They found no cryptic notes or strange markings on walls or in secret locations. The family's belongings remained undisturbed, suggesting no break-in was attempted. Even more baffling, they did not find any trace of Tommy. His disappearance seemed to vanish into thin air. The most disturbing discovery came when the investigators examined the McIntyre home itself. Strange patterns were traced on their bedroom wall with what appeared to be a glowing red light. These marks were consistent in size and spacing, as if something had drawn them deliberately. Investigators also uncovered an old diary belonging to Mrs. McIntyre. Its contents revealed her deep spiritual beliefs and constant fear of the supernatural forces that she believed lurked within Eileen Moore. Her final entry was dated just before the lighthouse keeper's clock stopped. It spoke of a malevolent force surrounding their property, yet she still wrote about maintaining hope for their family's return. Despite these findings, many questions remained unanswered. Why would a clock freeze in time? What caused Tommy to vanish? And who or what might have been responsible for the other inexplicable occurrences, the trees moving on their own and crops withering? The most unsettling part of the investigation was when they finally uncovered the lighthouse's inner sanctum. Inside, where no human should normally enter, stood a series of strange symbols etched into the walls. These symbols were not found in any known language, nor did they correspond to any ancient lore or magic rituals practiced by local communities. What investigators discovered next would shake even the most skeptical minds. The wall with those ghostly red traces had been meticulously carved using tools that defied human capabilities, blades sharp enough to cut through concrete and metal. The symbols themselves were composed of intricate patterns far beyond what could be created by normal means. As they pieced together the evidence, investigators realized a pattern emerged. Each event, the clock stopping, Tommy's disappearance, the plants withering, all seemed to occur at specific times linked to these symbols. It was as if something or someone used those marks as their own personal calendar, orchestrating events in an almost choreographed manner. The final piece of the puzzle came when investigators stumbled upon a hidden chamber behind one of the lighthouse's walls. Inside, they discovered what appeared to be remnants of ancient technology and artifacts. Some items were clearly not from this era, they defied explanation with their sheer age and complexity. One particularly disturbing find was a small device that could have been used for time manipulation. Investigators began to question if they had indeed uncovered evidence of extraterrestrial or otherworldly interference. Could something far beyond human comprehension be controlling these events? The answers, should there even be any, remained elusive and frightening. The mystery at Eileen Moore kept investigators on the edge of their seats, but it also pushed them towards new frontiers of exploration and discovery, whether they were ready for what awaited or not. And that darkness beneath the surface continued to loom ominously over this isolated lighthouse, waiting for its secrets to be fully unveiled. As the investigation deepened, investigators began to realize the full scope of their task. They had barely scratched the surface when a discovery loomed over them like a dark cloud. The most unsettling piece of physical evidence found its way into their hands, a journal belonging to one of the lighthouse keepers. The entries were penned in an eerie script, appearing as if carved with a tool beyond human capability. The handwriting itself was distinctively feminine and calm, yet the content was chillingly detailed. It described a recurring nightmare, seeing figures move through the walls, shadows that seemed solid but vanished when they tried to touch them. These entities were relentless, always returning. The entries also detailed strange occurrences within the lighthouse itself, windows locking themselves shut without any explanation provided. The clock stopped ticking in sync with these nightmares, and even the most mundane objects appeared to be drawn towards the keeper's bed by unseen forces. It was a catalogue of what could only be described as supernatural manipulation. What shook them even more was when they discovered a small, ornate box hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside were remnants of ancient technology, components that defied understanding and age. One fragment bore markings similar to those found in the lighthouse itself, suggesting an intricate connection between these forces and whatever had been set in motion here. Investigators made their final breakthrough when they discovered a series of encrypted symbols etched into the walls leading from one room to another, specifically avoiding any direct paths. The door to the hidden chamber was closed with an ancient-looking key mechanism, keys that bore no resemblance to those found anywhere nearby. They didn't fit, yet they opened effortlessly. And then they found something that no one was prepared for. A series of testaments written on the walls themselves in a language so foreign it defied translation. These texts described a ritual or ceremony used by entities to maintain control over the lighthouse and its keepers. Some contained instructions detailing how to manipulate time itself, with specific times and events marked as key moments. The revelation sent shockwaves through their ranks, challenging everything they knew about these phenomena. If these symbols were real, then someone, something, was actively manipulating not just time but reality itself at Eilean Mor. Their existence pushed the boundaries of what could be explained by mere human intuition or supernatural forces, pointing towards a deeper, more malevolent presence than any investigation had anticipated. And as they continued to unravel this ancient puzzle, it became clear that the nightmare plaguing them wasn't limited to a single entity but a network of twisted technology and entities. The lighthouse itself seemed like an instrument in a grander plan, one where the keepers were unwittingly participants rather than victims. As they delved deeper into these mysteries, they found themselves at a crossroads, prepared to face revelations that would change everything they thought they knew about supernatural occurrences once and for all. And then they found something that no one was prepared for. And as they stood in the hidden chamber, looking at those ancient symbols etched into the walls, their breath caught. The realization struck them like a thunderbolt: these were not just mere markings of power but the blueprint for a war against humanity. A war fought with time itself. The atmosphere grew thicker, suffocating under the weight of what they had uncovered. What could this ancient conflict mean? How far did it reach? And who or what was orchestrating this chaos from beyond the veil? As they stepped back into the light, each discovery fueled their fears while also amplifying their resolve to uncover the truth. The dread that had settled over them began to transform into an unyielding determination. For every piece of evidence found, more questions arose, and with it, a growing conviction that whatever was at play here went far beyond anything they had ever encountered before. And then they found something that no one was prepared for. This revelation pushed their investigation towards the very edge of what humanity could comprehend or accept, leaving them haunted by whispers from the shadows. For now, they knew only that there were forces at work much darker and more insidious than any ghost story or supernatural tale ever told. The battle to uncover these secrets seemed both inevitable and impossibly daunting, a fight where no one was fully prepared for what might come next. And then they found something that no one was prepared for. The investigation into the lighthouse had reached its darkest depths, and yet, every new revelation seemed to leave them further adrift in a fog of uncertainty and fear. The official explanation provided by the local authorities painted a picture of technological malfunctions, possibly linked to the unique environment at Eilean Mor. The clock stopped due to an anomaly in the lighthouse's power supply. As for the missing keepers, they were reported dead from natural causes, accidents attributed to stress and exhaustion under unusual conditions. But as investigators dug deeper into their official conclusions, inconsistencies began to surface. Evidence collected during inspections contradicted these explanations. Footage showed workers walking where shadows should have appeared based on their nightmares. Temperature sensors indicated anomalies in temperature fluctuations within the lighthouse. And finally, those ancient symbols found beneath the floorboards provided yet another layer of complexity. The investigators started whispering theories, whispers that dared not speak aloud until now. It wasn't a matter of technology failing but something far more sinister at play. Some theorized that these occurrences were part of an ancient ritual, one designed to attract and control human souls for use in dark magic practices. Others believed it was a conduit through which malevolent entities could traverse between worlds, exploiting the lighthouse as a nexus point. But the most unsettling whisper came from those who had been observing closely without fully understanding. They spoke of something far more primal, an entity or force that viewed these keepers as pawns in a grander scheme to manipulate time and reality itself. The ritual was but one tool used by this entity, with its true intentions shrouded in mystery. The official explanation failed utterly to account for all the evidence they had uncovered. It seemed as if anyone who dared to challenge the status quo would be met with swift dismissal or worse, silenced from speaking their truths aloud. The pressure to conform and maintain a semblance of control was immense, especially when it came to matters that might upset societal beliefs about the supernatural. And so, investigators continued to piece together this puzzle, driven by both desperation and an insatiable need for answers. Each discovery brought them closer to understanding but also deeper into danger. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that what was happening at Eilean Mor went far beyond mere human intuition or belief systems. But the truth, as it turned out, was far worse than any theory. And with each new piece of evidence, their grip on reality began to slip further. The line between what was real and what seemed almost surreal blurred into a miasma of fear and uncertainty. The whispers grew louder in their minds until they were deafening, urging them towards the ultimate truth, one that could not only shatter their understanding but potentially break society as we knew it. And with this realization came an undeniable sense of dread. They had uncovered something so profound, so incomprehensible, that even admitting to its existence threatened to plunge humanity into chaos and despair. For now, they stood at a crossroads, ready to uncover the truth, only to discover that there were forces far beyond human comprehension already in control. But the truth, as it turned out, was far worse than any theory. The horror intensified as investigators finally found the answers they had been searching for, but the truth that awaited them left them gasping and shaking. They discovered a hidden chamber beneath Eilean Mor's labyrinthine floorboards, sealed off by ancient symbols and intricate traps designed to deter intrusion. Inside this chamber was not just some forgotten artifact or ritual book, but an altar of sorts dedicated to something far darker. On the altar lay human remains, more than just bodies, they were vessels. Each keeper who had vanished had been drained of their souls for use in a dark magic ritual. The details were chilling. The victims, chosen by their unique life stories and connections to time itself, were drawn from across generations. One was said to have possessed the ability to stop clocks, another had seen visions of the future. Their souls, once freed from their bodies, became conduits for this ancient entity's dark power. Investigators uncovered that each keeper's spirit remained within the lighthouse after death, bound by rituals and symbols that kept them tethered. They watched as these spirits were used to summon the entity, a being unlike anything they had ever encountered, a manifestation of malevolence itself, manipulating time and reality at its whim. The horrors continued beyond the altar. Investigators found ancient texts describing how the entity sought human souls to feed upon, drawing them through the very fabric of time itself. The lighthouse became a beacon for this dark power, a nexus point where time could be stretched or warped according to the entity's will. What no one realized until much later was the most chilling part of all, that the clock stops didn't happen due to technological malfunctions or anomalies. It stopped because the very core of Eilean Mor's magic consumed their lives, their time itself in a desperate bid for sustenance and power. Investigators paused, allowing themselves to absorb the full horror of what they had uncovered. The realization hit them like a physical blow. Not just were these keepers sacrificed, but countless others across generations, each with their unique story, fate sealed by this dark ritual. And as investigators stood in that chamber, shivering and filled with an overwhelming sense of dread, they knew the true horror wasn't what happened there, but what had been done to those lives. It was a testament to humanity's darker impulses and the horrors mankind could unleash upon itself when driven by twisted beliefs or desperation for power. But the weight of their discovery was only the beginning. The true terror lay in what this meant for the future of Eilean Mor and its neighbors, and whether other such rituals had been enacted elsewhere. The lighthouse stood as a stark reminder that even the most isolated corners of Earth were not immune to forces beyond our comprehension. What no one realized until much later was the most chilling part of all. The last of the artifacts had been catalogued, the final record written. Investigators stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the ancient and weathered walls of Eilean Mor. They knew now why they were there, what the lighthouse's dark secrets entailed. But as they turned to leave, a chilling realization washed over them like an icy draft. What no one realized until much later was not just about the ritual or the sacrifices. It was about something far more insidious and pervasive within their own ranks, a group of shadowy figures who had orchestrated this entire ordeal from the shadows. These investigators had been part of the conspiracy, manipulated by those whose hands were still tied behind their backs. Their mission was to uncover the truth, but it was all an elaborate charade designed to keep a greater evil contained within these walls. The final twist was that not one single person could have uncovered this without revealing the entire mechanism in place, the web of lies, the deceit, and the power struggle behind their very presence there. In exposing Eileen Moore's darkness, they had only made matters worse by bringing attention to something so vast and hidden it would destroy them if exposed. The investigators knew now why the clock stopped, not just for technological reasons but because a portion of time itself was being used as a shield, a protective barrier around this dark secret. Without the ritual or these sacrifices, the true horror could emerge, unleashing catastrophic consequences across their world. As they stood in the darkness outside Eileen Moore, their minds reeling with questions and fear, one final thought lingered: who among them was truly safe? The question haunted not just investigators but all of humanity. Was it someone closer than we realized, or perhaps even within us? And as the sun set over the desolate landscape, leaving only the distant wind howling through empty halls, they were left with a single final thought: what would they do now that the curtain had been pulled back so far? Would they face their fears head-on or retreat deeper into ignorance and fear? The most unsettling line to linger in the minds of viewers was this: if they revealed it all, could humanity withstand the wrath unleashed by forces beyond our control? The final question left unanswered echoed in an eternal silence.